Part 1. Rigidity versus Flexibility, the Tao of Strength. The rigid and stiff will be broken. The soft and yielding will overcome. Lao Tzu. Let me ask you something, friend. When the storm comes, the real one, what survives? The mighty oak with its proud, upright stance, or the humble reed that bends in the wind? The Tao teaches us something that modern life, with all its noise and urgency, tries to make us forget. Softness is not weakness. Flexibility is not fragility. In fact, it's the very essence of real, enduring strength. We live in a culture that glorifies force of will, force of ambition, force of personality. We're told to push harder, speak louder, stand firm no matter what. Strength, we're taught, means resistance. But Lao Tzu would shake his head at that idea. Weakness is how the Tao works. Now, that might sound odd to modern ears. In a world driven by dominance and conquest, why would weakness be a virtue? Let's unpack that, because this isn't about being passive. It's about understanding the nature of things. The Tao, the way, flows like water. And water, my friend, is the softest thing in the world. Yet it wears down stone. It carves canyons. It finds its path not by force, but by patience and harmony. I've lived long enough to see that the people who break down in life aren't always the ones who were weak. Often, they were just too rigid. They didn't know how to yield when life asked them to let go. They thought they had to win every argument, dominate every relationship, control every outcome. But the Tao says otherwise. Think about your relationships. The hardest moments with your partner, your child, your colleague. If you met their fire with fire, what did it produce? Usually, destruction. But if you met their storm with stillness, if you yielded without collapsing, you preserved peace, and sometimes even transformed the whole dynamic. That's the paradox. To be unbreakable, you must be willing to bend. This is not just philosophy, it's practical. In the modern world, emotional rigidity breaks marriages, ends friendships, and sabotages our peace of mind. We think we have to win, but the Tao says, let go of winning. The soft and yielding will overcome. A person who flows with life rather than against it is not weak. They are wise. They have learned the art of non-resistance. Now, this doesn't mean being a doormat. It means knowing when to stand and when to yield. Just like a tree that sways in the wind but keeps its roots deep in the earth, you remain grounded, but you don't need to fight the breeze. Let me put it another way. Water doesn't argue with the rocks. It just flows around them. And so should we. In daily life, this could look like choosing silence over shouting. It might mean walking away from an argument that doesn't serve you. It might mean adjusting your plans rather than forcing them. And in moments of stress, it means allowing emotion to pass through you like a wave without letting it knock you over. You don't lose your strength by being soft. You express it. Look at the most loving fathers, the most enduring partners, the most respected elders. Their strength isn't in domination, it's in presence, in grace, in that quiet, flexible resilience that doesn't collapse under pressure because it knows how to yield. In my own life, I've had to learn this lesson the hard way. In youth, I mistook rigidity for power. I thought I had to clench my fists through every storm. But age and the Tao taught me otherwise. Now I know true strength is gentle. It listens. It moves with the world, not against it. And when crisis comes, it doesn't shatter. It flows. So if you find yourself gripping too tightly to something, your ideas, your pride, your need to control, I invite you to loosen your hands a little. Soften your stance. Let the way lead you. The rigid and stiff will be broken. The soft and yielding will overcome. The Tao does not shout. It whispers. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it saying, "Bend so you don't break."
Part 2. The Power of Softness in Leadership. Leading with the Tao. Take care of difficult problems while they are still easy. Do easy things before they become too hard. Lao Tzu. There was once a king, proud and powerful, who surrounded himself with strong warriors, men with muscles like mountains, eyes like fire, swords always within reach. He believed fear would protect his throne, that muscle was might, that loyalty came from domination. But then came the philosopher, quiet, thoughtful, not a sword in sight. He looked at the king and said, "If you must rule with fear, you have already lost the hearts of your people. True power does not come from control. It comes from care." Now that sounds like weakness to the modern ear, doesn't it? In a world where authority is often mistaken for aggression, we've come to believe that leadership must be loud, commanding, intimidating. But the Tao teaches otherwise. Lao Tzu said that softness, properly understood, is the foundation of lasting power, because it doesn't need to push. It draws people in by its nature. Let me explain. Tyrants build walls. They create distance between themselves and the people. Why? Because fear is isolating. When you rule with punishment, you must always be watching your back. You spend more time keeping power than using it wisely. That's a cycle that leads to collapse. History is full of such stories. Fear breeds resentment. Resentment demands more force. More force creates more distance, until one day you're alone and vulnerable. The Tao offers another way, a quieter way. But don't confuse quiet with weakness. To lead softly is not to surrender, it is to harmonize. The wise leader doesn't need to shout. Their presence speaks for itself. Think of it in modern terms. A boss who leads through fear, micromanaging, intimidating, controlling, creates a culture of anxiety. Employees clock out not just from work, but from loyalty. But the leader who listens, who leads with integrity, who treats others with respect, they build trust. And where there is trust, there is unity. Where there is unity, there is strength. This isn't just philosophy, it's psychology, and it's timeless. In relationships too, romantic, professional, or familial, we find the same truth. A partner who dominates may win the moment, but they lose the connection. A parent who yells may get obedience, but they miss understanding. A leader who listens builds bridges. Softness disarms. It does not destroy. Now let's return to the wisdom of Lao Tzu. Take care of difficult problems while they are still easy. Softness doesn't wait for conflict to explode. It sees the seed of disharmony while it's still small.
It steps in with compassion before escalation is needed, like a gardener tending roots before weeds take over. And what does that require? Presence, patience, emotional clarity. I've seen this over a lifetime. The people who truly lead, in families, in communities, in crises, are rarely the loudest. They are the ones others turn to in silence, not out of fear, but out of trust. Softness doesn't demand loyalty, it earns it. But let's be clear, this path is not easy. Soft leadership takes more courage than barking orders. It takes more inner strength to be kind under pressure than to lash out. It requires a deep understanding of self and others, and the willingness to put ego aside. The Tao shows us that leading from softness is not about yielding control. It's about embracing harmony, like water shaping stone, not with force, but with time and flow. You can be firm without being harsh. You can be respected without being feared. You can lead, not from above, but from within. The philosopher who advised that old king wasn't trying to overthrow the throne. He was trying to teach the king not to fall, because the ones who rise by fear will fall by it. But the ones who rise through virtue stand the test of time. In today's world, we need this wisdom more than ever. In our homes, in our businesses, in our politics. Because softness, true softness, is not passive, it is alert, it is intentional, and it is profoundly wise. The Tao says, be like water, adaptable, nourishing, unyielding in its purpose, yet never in a hurry. That's the kind of leader that lasts. That's the kind of strength we should all aspire to. And maybe, just maybe, that philosopher's advice wasn't just for kings. Maybe it was for all of us.
Part 3. The Wisdom of Non-Action. Letting the Tao do the work. There's an old story in Taoist circles about a man named Liang, a renowned tiger trainer in ancient China. Now, training tigers isn't something you do with brute force. They're not puppies. You don't shout commands at a tiger and expect it to roll over. And yet, Liang succeeded where many failed, and not because he was stronger than the animal. He was wiser. He didn't feed the tigers live prey because doing so, he said, would awaken their bloodlust. He didn't overfeed them either. Too much food makes them lazy and aggressive. He didn't starve them. Hunger makes them reckless and cruel. He kept them in perfect balance. Not through domination, but by understanding their nature. Now that's the Tao. In the West, we are taught to fix problems by force. Conquer, push harder, try more. But the Tao teaches something that sounds strange, even offensive to the modern mindset. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is nothing at all. Let me be clear. Wu Wei, the Taoist principle of non-action, doesn't mean laziness or indifference. It means non-forcing. It means aligning with the natural current of life instead of fighting against it. It means, like Liang, you understand the nature of things and act only when the time is right. Now, most of us aren't taming tigers, but we are dealing with people. And people, I'd argue, are more unpredictable than any tiger. Think about the last argument you had, maybe with a partner, a colleague, a friend. You felt your pulse rise. You wanted to win. And so you pushed. You forced your opinion. You took action. And what happened? Most likely it escalated. The more you pushed, the more they pushed back. That's the trap of reactive action. It might feel good in the moment,
like you're doing something, but it rarely leads to peace. Lao Tzu put it this way: the rigid and stiff will be broken. The soft and yielding will overcome. We break relationships when we refuse to bend. We lose control when we grip too tightly. And we exhaust ourselves trying to fix problems that don't need fixing. They just need space. Let me tell you something I've learned over the years, after thousands of conversations, conflicts, and quiet reckonings. Not every emotion requires a reaction. Not every problem needs your solution. Not every tension is yours to resolve. Sometimes, the greatest act of wisdom is to wait, to breathe, to observe without interfering, to trust the Tao more than your ego. That's not passivity. That's presence. Let's return to Liang for a moment. He didn't change the tiger. He changed the conditions around the tiger. He worked at the level of the root, not the symptom. Too often we get caught treating symptoms, putting out fires we started ourselves. We yell at people for being distant instead of asking what in us pushed them away. We chase love that keeps fleeing, not realizing our pursuit is what keeps it running. But when we follow the Tao, we start to ask deeper questions. What is the root here? What part of me is pushing too hard, needing too much, fixing what isn't broken? You want to live wisely? Then learn this. It's not your job to control life. Life is not a machine. It's a garden. You don't control a garden, you tend it. You don't force flowers open, you let them bloom. That's what Wu Wei means. Non-action doesn't mean inaction. It means right action, natural action, timely action. Action that arises not from ego or panic, but from clarity. In relationships, this means giving space instead of chasing. In conflict, it means listening instead of reacting. In failure, it means resting before you rush to rebuild. Tao is not about doing nothing. It's about not doing the wrong thing at the wrong time for the wrong reason. As Lao Tzu wrote, "Take care of difficult problems while they are still easy. Do easy things before they become too hard." Soft approaches prevent hard consequences. Stillness reveals the next step more clearly than stress ever will. So the next time you find yourself in chaos, emotional, relational, or existential, try this. Stop. Observe. Breathe. Then, if the Tao moves through you, act. But only if it's the right time. Only if your heart is still. Only if your ego is quiet. That is the way of Liang. That is the way of the Tao. And it might just be the way that saves you from your own well-meaning storms.
Part 4. Water as the ideal. Strength in softness. Let me tell you a secret I learned late in life. Be like water. Now I know that sounds like some cryptic proverb from a fortune cookie, but it is in fact one of the deepest truths ever spoken. Lao Tzu put it this way: water is the softest and most yielding substance, yet nothing is better than water for overcoming the hard and rigid. Let that sink in, because in a world obsessed with hardness, hard deadlines, hard bodies, hard truths, we've forgotten that the most powerful thing in nature is soft, quiet, and flowing. Water bends around obstacles. It doesn't fight the mountain, it carves it. It doesn't resist gravity, it dances with it. And in time, water outlasts all stone. So why do we, as people, fight so hard to be hard? We think strength means domination. We think power is about standing our ground. We argue to prove we're right. We clench our fists to make a point. We shout when we want to be heard. But water teaches a different way. Water doesn't have to shout. It doesn't need a platform. It doesn't crash through the door. It finds the crack in the wall. In life, and especially in relationships, this is the wisdom most people miss. You do not need to overpower to influence. You do not need to control to lead. You do not need to speak loudly to be heard. Think about it. Who is the strongest person in the room? It's not the one talking the most. It's the one who's listening, deeply, fully, without ego. The one asking questions. The one adapting to the conversation without needing to dominate it. In Taoist thinking, adaptability is mastery, and nothing is more adaptable than water. Water can flow as a stream, or crash as a wave. It can nourish a garden, or hollow out a canyon. It can freeze into stillness, or boil into force. But it always remains true to itself. It changes shape, never essence. That's the key. We can respond to life's challenges, shift, bend, pivot, without losing who we are. That's not weakness. That's spiritual strength. See, the rigid will always break. The tree that won't bend in the storm is the one that snaps. But the reed, soft, low to the ground, it survives. It bends and then rises again. Now, here's something else water does. It always seeks the lowest place. It doesn't climb for status. It doesn't demand recognition. It humbles itself, and because of that, it nourishes everything around it. There's a reason rivers flow to the ocean and not the other way around. In Taoism, what is low is often what is most high. Humility is not weakness. It is power under control. When you step into a room and don't need to prove yourself, when you let others speak and choose to understand before replying, when you absorb tension instead of amplifying it, you are moving like water. Let me give you a modern example. Picture a heated business meeting. Everyone's interrupting, pitching, posturing. The energy is rigid, sharp, competitive. But there's one person, quiet, calm, still. He listens. He nods. And when he finally speaks, the whole room leans in. That is water. That is presence. That is the Tao at work. He doesn't need to dominate because he influences. He doesn't need to push because he flows with purpose. And that brings me to one last point. Water flows, but it also shapes. It adapts, but it also endures. It lowers itself, but it lifts life around it. That is the Tao. And so I ask you, where are you trying too hard to be rigid? Where could softness serve you better than strength? Where might flow be wiser than force? Start there. Try yielding. Try listening. Try lowering yourself, not in value, but in ego.
Because the wise one in the room is not the one who knows everything. It's the one humble enough to keep learning, and the one quiet enough to let the Tao do the talking.
Part 5. Flexibility is life. Adapting with the Tao. Let me tell you a truth most folks resist until it's almost too late. The living are soft and yielding. The dead are rigid and stiff. Lao Tzu. Now think about that. The newborn child is soft, supple, breathing. The tree that's alive bends with the wind. But death is stiff, cold, fixed. That's the paradox. What we often call strength in this world, being unshakable, unmovable, unwilling to change, is often just a slower form of decay. Life is motion, life is change. And those who live well are those who can move with it. Lao Tzu didn't glorify resistance. He praised those who could bend without breaking, shift without losing their center, and adapt without losing their soul. In nature, it's not the strongest that survives. It's the most flexible. And the same is true in modern life. Let's bring that home to the 21st century. Look around. Relationships fall apart because people won't grow together. Careers collapse because folks refuse to learn new ways. Nations struggle because their leaders grip too tightly to outdated systems. Rigidity breaks. Flexibility lives. You either adapt or perish. And no, that is not just about biology. It's about spirit. When you're in a relationship, flexibility means you're not clinging to being right. You're focused on staying connected. When you're facing change at work, flexibility means you lean in and learn, not resist and complain. When your plans fall apart, flexibility is what helps you find the next best step, instead of staying frozen in frustration. Here's the beautiful irony. The more flexible you become, the stronger you actually are. Because no storm can break you. You don't resist the wind, you move with it. You don't fight the current, you find your flow. That's not weakness. That's mastery. The Tao doesn't teach us to avoid structure. It teaches us not to be enslaved by it. Yes, principles matter, values matter. But even those must evolve. What served you at 20 may not serve you at 40. What protected you in the past may be what's suffocating you now. Let me tell you, I've lived a few lives in one. Farmer, soldier, teacher, friend. And the one thing that's kept me moving forward with grace, not just grit, is the willingness to change. To drop what no longer serves, to rethink the way I think, to meet life not with fists clenched, but hands open. You see, Taoism reminds us, there is no one way to live. There is only the way, Tao, unfolding moment by moment. And that means staying soft. It means walking through the world like water, shaping yourself to the moment, not smashing it. It means breathing through discomfort instead of reacting from fear. It means letting go of the illusion of control and learning instead how to respond. That's the path of the sage. He is not attached to outcome. He is not hardened by identity. He remains light, flexible, present. So let me ask you, where are you being too rigid in your life right now? What belief, habit, or identity are you clinging to out of fear? What might happen if you let go, softened, and adapted instead? Because the Tao does not reward the forceful.
It rewards the receptive, the one who listens, the one who flows, the one who bends, and because of that, endures. That's the end of our journey through the 5 teachings. But of course, the way never ends. It only continues, moment by moment, in how you choose to show up, in your relationships, your work, your thoughts. So if this spoke to something deep in you, stay with us, breathe, flow, and let the Tao carry you. Before you go, the way does not shout. It whispers, in quiet moments, in passing winds, in teachings that return when you're ready. So if this message stirred something in you, subscribe, not out of urgency, but as a quiet vow to keep walking the path. And tap the bell so you do not miss the next step, the next lesson, the next reminder. Because wisdom is not learned all at once. It is gathered, one still moment at a time. We'll be waiting for you on the road ahead.